Putin takes another nuclear risk. Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to cover up for the ongoing military disaster in Ukraine by manipulating nuclear weapons once again. While Russia's recent actions are concerning, they do not constitute an immediate crisis. To that end, I present the following 3 articles from The Atlantic. When the Russians' military efforts in Ukraine are failing, Vladimir Putin inevitably threatens to use nuclear weapons. Despite Russian and Western predictions that the city of Bakhmut would fall, it has remained in Ukrainian hands despite weeks of bombardment by the Russians. The Ukrainian High Command recently said that the situation is being stabilized, which is generally good news. Regardless of what happens next, the cost to the Russians has been immense. Russian commanders are reportedly using human wave tactics, sending poorly armed men into battle merely to absorb Ukrainian ammunition and die so that the next group of attackers can get closer to the lines. Putin is realistic about the lack of a decisive victory. If Russia does manage to capture Bakhmut, their flag will be planted atop a mountain of their own dead. Putin, desperate to alter the narrative both at home and abroad, has thus resumed nuclear risk-taking. On March 25, Putin announced on Russian television that Russia will deploy tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus, a country that shares borders with both Ukraine and NATO. This is both more and less than it seems, but first we should review some definitions. Yesterday, the Russian ambassador to Belarus doubled down on Putin's threat, announcing that Russia plans to deploy those weapons in the western part of Belarus, near the border with its NATO neighbors. A nuclear weapon can be considered tactical, without regard to any specific technological features. In practice, tactical nuclear weapons are designed to be delivered over shorter distances, typically less than 500 kilometers, using smaller warheads in order to hit specific targets on the battlefield, such as enemy force concentrations or rear bases. The primary targets of strategic weapons, such as intercontinental ballistic missiles or strategic bombers, are the enemy's strategic nuclear weapons, such as silos, bomber bases, and submarine pens, infrastructure, industry, and, in the worst-case scenario, cities. These strategic targets are intended to change the course of the war as a whole. Tactical weapons, on the other hand, are designed to be used closer to the front lines, and as a result, they are much weaker. Tactical nuclear arms can be as small as 10 or 20 kilotons, or even just 1. But small is relative in the world of nuclear weapons. The bomb the United States dropped on Hiroshima was about 15 kilotons. Even a small weapon can cause a lot of damage, kill a lot of people, and poison a lot of land. 1 kiloton is the explosive power equivalent to 1,000 tons of TNT. Exactly which Russian systems Putin plans to deploy to Belarus was not specified. Some possibilities are storing tactical warheads for use by Russian bomber aircraft or stationing short-range missiles near the border with Belarus. Instead of transferring these systems to Belarus, Russian forces would naturally guard and crew them. Whatever actions he takes in response to this announcement, they will be the trifecta of Putinist foreign policy: ineffective, naive, and dangerous. It's a pointless gamble because Russia gains no strategic advantage from stationing tactical nukes in Belarus. Putin may be trying to tie Alexander Lukashenko, the strongman of Belarus, more firmly to the mast of Russia's sinking ship in Ukraine. Putting nuclear weapons in Belarus is strategically stupid because it buys Putin more political trouble than it's worth and may justify stationing elite Russian forces on Belarusian territory for years to come. However, Russia already has plenty of ability to deliver tactical strikes on Ukraine and NATO. Though he claims support for the plan, Lukashenko likely doesn't want these things in Belarus for a number of reasons, including the fact that they will only serve to highlight the fact that he is merely one of Putin's local Gauleiters and the fact that they will lead to even more instability in Belarus. Many of Lukashenko's own people despise him, and he won the last election only through dishonesty and brute force. The situation would worsen if Belarus became a primary nuclear target. Putin could potentially irritate the Chinese, which would be even more foolish of him. While Vladimir Putin may be the stud duck in the Kremlin, he is now Xi Jinping's junior partner in Eurasia. For Xi, who just issued a joint statement with Putin calling on all nuclear powers to refrain from deploying their nuclear weapons beyond their national territories and to withdraw all nuclear weapons deployed abroad, the Belarus decision is a snub, as noted by former U.S. Ambassador to Russia Mike McFaul. That section was meant as a warning to the United States. But Putin has stepped on that message, making the first overt threat since the Cold War's end that Russia will station nuclear arms outside of Russia. Finally, Putin's announcement is provocative because it shows once again how quickly the Russian leader will resort to nuclear threats. A Chinese diplomat on Monday gingerly deflected a question about the Belarus issue by referring to a previous statement by the 5 major nuclear powers that a nuclear war could never be won and must never be fought. That statement was also signed by Russia. Since the mere mention of nuclear weapons no longer causes panic in Washington or Brussels, Putin is probably trying to extract as much leverage as possible from the nuclear card by drawing in a new state. While any nuclear threat must be taken seriously, Putin's announcement, which is, at this point, just an announcement, does not constitute an immediate crisis that necessitates an immediate response. Well, the Chinese might like a word, but that's Beijing's problem. US and NATO intelligence analysts are, as always, continually watching to see whether Russia is taking concrete steps to use such weapons, for example, if they detect that warheads are being moved from storage to active units that could employ them. But so far, according to US sources, nothing of the sort is happening. But a foreign leader trying to get out of a military disaster by making nuclear threats is more likely to make other rash decisions. Russia's position is likely to worsen as spring progresses, so Putin will likely try to press this raw nerve again. This is especially true as the death toll in Russia rises.